The intellectual seeker, the thinker lost in thought. He is driven not by entertainment or ego, but by a hunger to understand. He chases systems, frameworks, hidden truths, always searching for that one concept that will crystallize everything. But in his endless pursuit of knowledge, he risks mistaking motion for direction and clarity for completion. He isn't shallow, he's simply adrift in depth. Knowledge as a substitute for action. He devours books, podcasts, lectures, videos. He speaks in abstractions, references, and insights. But beneath all that cognitive movement lies a kind of paralysis. He knows too much to act simply, yet too little to act confidently. He delays doing because there's always one more theory to explore. He isn't procrastinating. He's over-preparing for a life he never starts. The seduction of the infinite puzzle. Every answer births 3 more questions. Every model exposes its flaws. He becomes obsessed with systems thinking, recursive loops, epistemology, meta-ethics, until he no longer engages reality, only his models of it. He's not avoiding the truth. He is trapped inside the idea of it. Identity through intellectual distinction. He defines himself by what he knows that others don't. He seeks ideas not just for their utility, but for their rarity. He wants to be the person who gets it, who sees beneath the surface. But this breeds quiet arrogance. He begins to look down on simplicity, dismiss practicality, and elevate obscurity. His mind becomes a cathedral where only complexity is worshipped. Endless integration, zero transformation. He connects everything, psychology, economics, philosophy, systems theory, but the map never becomes the territory. His inner world is rich, his outer world, often stagnant. His relationships, habits, and health suffer while he's lost in a constellation of insights. He knows what he should do, but knowledge isn't his problem, application is. Fear disguised as curiosity. At the deepest level, his search for understanding is often fueled by fear. Fear of insignificance, of error, of being unprepared. He overthinks to avoid being vulnerable, to control what can't be controlled. His questions are sincere, but they're also a shield. He wants to know everything before he risks anything. Thought is a tool, not a throne. The intellectual seeker has immense potential, but only if he remembers that thought exists to serve action, not replace it. Wisdom must leave the mind and touch the world. Otherwise, it's just elaborate stalling. Ask yourself, am I learning this to change or to delay change? When was the last time I acted on what I already knew? What would happen if I lived one idea fully instead of understanding 100 halfway? The intellectual seeker doesn't need another model. He needs a moment of courage. The rage junkie, the addict of outrage. The rage junkie doesn't seek truth, he seeks friction. He is addicted to the adrenaline of anger, the high of indignation, the fleeting power of being against. He tells himself he's informed, awake, engaged, but he's not chasing clarity. He's chasing confirmation that someone is to blame. Rage as emotional currency. Anger gives him energy he lacks elsewhere, motivation without purpose. In a world where he feels powerless, rage becomes his weapon, his shield, his sense of movement. It feels like action, even when it's only reaction. Each video, each tweet, each headline spikes his cortisol and dopamine. The brain registers this as meaning, but it's junk meaning, synthetic, shallow, and unsatisfying. The algorithm as a drug dealer, YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, they don't show him truth, they show him enemies. The content is crafted to escalate conflict, to intensify us versus them narratives. Creators don't inform, they provoke, and the rage junkie returns again and again like a smoker lighting the next cigarette with the last. He becomes chemically dependent on being upset. Outrage feels like power, but its passive rage gives the illusion of moral superiority. He feels righteous, but righteousness without action becomes a sedative. He watches more, comments more, feels more, but changes nothing. He's in the stands, screaming at the players, convinced he's shaping the game, but the system profits from his voice, not his victory. Identity through opposition. He no longer defines himself by what he wants, but by what he hates. Over time, he forgets his original goals, career, health, mastery, and instead becomes a node of opposition. If the target disappeared, he wouldn't know who he is. He doesn't evolve, he reacts. The empty crash. After the high, once the video ends, once the tweet storm fades, he's left with exhaustion, bitterness, and confusion. No clarity, no tools, just the urge to dive back in and feel something again. The rage junkie mistakes stimulation for strength, but he is mentally and emotionally drained, not sharpened. Rage is a fire, it must be directed, not fed. Rage can be useful when it's aimed with strategy and discipline, but for the rage junkie, it's a wildfire. It burns through time, focus, identity, and leaves him numb. The more he consumes, the more powerless he becomes. He doesn't need more enemies, he needs purpose. Ask yourself, is this rage building anything or just burning your energy? Who benefits from your outrage? What would happen if you redirected your anger into creation instead of consumption? The rage junkie is not powerless, but his power is being harvested by others. The lonely witness, the mind that watches because it's not watched. He never tells himself they're his friends. He doesn't imagine being part of the conversation, but over time, video after video, story after story, they start to feel like someone he knows, not a celebrity, not a creator, someone in his life. He doesn't think he's close to them. He just feels less alone because they're always there. Emotional sync without contact. When they laugh, he laughs. When they share something painful, his face falls too. It's not pretend, it's real empathy. But the more he mirrors their feelings, the more the line blurs. Not between truth and fiction, but between viewer and participant. Accumulated familiarity as surrogate intimacy. He remembers their stories, their tone, their habits. Over time, they start to occupy the same space in his memory as real people do. He knows them, not logically, but emotionally. And because of that, their presence begins to comfort him the way a friend's would, not because they reached out, but because they never left. The gentle erosion of loneliness. He doesn't feel alone in the traditional sense. The screen fills the room. The voice fills the silence. There's no abrupt pain, just a soft numbness, like being full from candy instead of food. His social hunger is quieted, but never fed. It's not connection, it's simulated companionship. Why he stops reaching out? When someone already feels present, why call a friend? Why suffer the awkwardness of small talk or rejection? The digital bond is always easier, always there. He may not admit he's lonely, because he doesn't feel like he is. But his phone contacts gather dust, while the algorithm knows exactly what he needs. And so, real intimacy dies, not from absence, but from replacement. The illusion of knowing, the reality of isolation. He mourns when they talk about their loss. He celebrates when they achieve something. But he will never be mentioned, never be seen. The intimacy flows only one way, but the feelings do not. And that's the tragedy. The more he cares, the more invisible he becomes. Familiar faces are not familiar souls. The lonely witness doesn't pretend to have friends. He simply forgets the difference between knowing of someone and being known. And as the screen fills his life with echoes of warmth, he slips further from the real thing. Ask yourself, who do I think about daily? Who's never once thought of me? Do I feel connected or just distracted? What's the last thing I said out loud to someone who could answer? The lonely witness doesn't need another familiar face. He needs to be seen. The success-seeking archetype, the dreamer in chains. You're driven by ambition, a hunger to escape your current state, and the desire to master a game you were never taught the rules of. You crave clarity, leverage, strategy, but beneath that, you're vulnerable to illusion. YouTube finance content exploits that vulnerability. When you're broke, you're not looking for theory. You're looking for transformation. But these videos hijack your ambition, convert it into dopamine, and feed it back to you as false progress. You feel like you're learning, you're not. You're being entertained with the illusion of action. The algorithm doesn't care about your bank account. The goal isn't to teach, it's to trap. Finance creators optimize for attention, not results. Their thumbnails scream urgency. 5 stocks to retire early. How I made 10K in a week. This isn't education. It's aspirational bait. It's not for your benefit. It's to keep your eyes locked for ad revenue and dopamine cycles. Real wealth is built in silence. YouTube wealth is built on spectacle. Information density versus psychological stimulation. High-value strategies are quiet, slow, and contextual, but YouTube punishes slow. So creators overstimulate, fast edits, rich visuals, exaggerated claims. They reward emotional spikes, fear, greed, envy. Your psychological state while watching makes you more likely to chase trends than build foundations. When you're poor, you need clarity, focus, and a plan. But finance videos scatter your attention across 100 empty options. You leave with more noise than when you started. You leave with a feeling, not a framework. You finish the video with hope, but no structure. You were seduced by presentation, not taught execution. The strategy was have high income or invest early, but no pathway from your reality to that result. This isn't teaching. It's motivational theater. It satisfies your success archetype's hunger the same way candy satisfies real hunger. Cheap, immediate, and empty. Your time is capital. When you're poor, your most valuable asset is time. Finance videos aren't cheap inspiration, they're expensive distraction. They consume hours that could be spent building skills, studying markets in depth, learning a trade, or practicing discipline. Every video is a trade. Dopamine now or transformation later? Ask yourself, do I feel more equipped or more overwhelmed after watching? Am I taking action or just watching others talk about it? Do I want success or the feeling of getting closer to it? Your ambition is sacred. Don't let the algorithm feed it junk. The escapist. The soul who hides in other worlds, because this one hurts. He doesn't chase knowledge or connection. He chases distance from his regrets, his failures, his shame. Each video, each game, each binge is a portal, a place where he doesn't exist, at least not the version of him he's grown to resent. He doesn't watch to be entertained. He watches to disappear. The quiet war against the present moment. To sit still is to feel the weight of time. To look around is to see everything he hasn't become. So he escapes, not once, but constantly. One more episode, one more scroll, one more infinite feed that asks nothing of him but his attention. He isn't lazy. He's tired of being himself. Fantasy is a mirror without judgment. In the video, the hero rises. In the podcast, the speaker always knows what to say. In the game, there's progress, clarity, reward. These worlds make sense. His doesn't. So he trades the chaos of real life for the clean fiction of algorithmic control. The screen becomes a shield, not from boredom, but from powerlessness. The reward loop of avoidance. He tells himself he's just relaxing, that he'll start soon, that it's not a big deal. But his mind learns. Avoidance equals relief. So over time, real-world discomfort triggers instant retreat. And soon, anything difficult, jobs, conversations, dreams, starts to feel impossible. He doesn't avoid life because it's hard. He avoids it because the escape is easier. Loss of self through consumption. The longer he escapes, the blurrier his real identity becomes. He can tell you everything about the shows he watches, the creators he follows, the lore he's memorized, but ask him who he is, and his voice falters. He's been so many things out there, he no longer remembers who he was in here. He hasn't failed, he's just forgotten the way back. The guilt loop that traps him further. After the escape ends, reality returns. The dishes are still there, the life is still untouched, and now guilt settles in. So he escapes again, not for fun, but to avoid the feeling of failure that every moment of idleness leaves behind. The escape becomes his shame, and the shame becomes his fuel, and with each cycle, the real world slips further out of reach. He doesn't need a new world, he needs the courage to face this one. The escapist isn't broken, he's just wounded. His retreat is not proof of weakness, it's a sign that he once tried, and it hurt too much. But no matter how far he runs, the truth waits patiently. Freedom isn't found in fantasy, it's reclaimed in reality. Ask yourself, what pain am I trying not to feel right now? Who would I become if I stopped hiding for just one day? What am I most afraid would happen if I truly showed up in my life? The escapist doesn't need another portal, he needs to come home. The irony-poisoned observer, the one who watches from the safety of the punchline. He sees everything, comments on everything, mocks everything, but never reveals anything. Not really. His identity is built on distance. Distance from sincerity, from vulnerability, from caring too much. Because caring is cringe, wanting is cringe, and he refuses to be the joke, so he becomes the one who tells it. He doesn't watch content for joy, he watches it to feel smarter than the people who do. The fear of being seen trying. He doesn't want to risk being passionate about something and failing, so he turns everything into a bit, a meme, a take. He never says, I love this. He says, imagine actually loving this. That's how he survives, by never letting his guard down enough to be disappointed. Irony isn't his style, it's his armor. The addiction to commentary without creation. He consumes content to dissect it, never to enjoy it. He pauses videos to tweet about them. He judges trends before understanding them. His satisfaction comes from having a take, not having an experience. But each clever quip distances him further from something real. He's not watching life, he's hovering over it with a smirk. Hyper-awareness as a prison. He's always 10 steps ahead in his head. He knows how people will react, what the backlash will be, what the countertake is. This sharpness makes him feel safe. No one can mock him if he mocks himself first, but that anticipation becomes exhaustion. Nothing surprises him anymore. Nothing moves him. When you see the joke before the punchline, laughter dies. The tragedy of the mask that sticks. What started as protection becomes personality. He used irony to avoid pain, but now he can't turn it off. Every earnest attempt at connection gets filtered through sarcasm. Every compliment becomes a bit. Every moment of joy gets reduced to content. He didn't mean to become hollow, he just stayed hidden too long. The deep craving for sincerity. Beneath the detachment is a hunger for awe, for love, for meaning, but he doesn't know how to say it anymore. He wants to be known without having to reveal himself. He wants to care without being vulnerable. But life doesn't work that way, and irony, once a shield, becomes a cage. You can't laugh and heal at the same time. The irony-poisoned observer is not a villain. He's someone who got hurt when he showed up honestly once and decided never to do it again. But healing requires sincerity. Growth demands cringe. Love needs risk. And none of that happens when you're narrating life instead of living it. Ask yourself, what am I afraid would happen if I said something without a joke? When did I decide that earnestness was dangerous? Do I want to be understood or just clever? The irony-poisoned observer doesn't need a better take. He needs to care, even when it hurts. The comparative saint, the degenerate who measures downward. He scrolls through chaos, fights, addictions, cringe compilations, and feels a subtle satisfaction. At least I'm not like that. His self-worth isn't built on virtue, discipline, or growth, but on proximity to those he deems lower. He is not rising, he's hovering slightly above collapse, using others' failure as his moral cushion. The delusion of contrast. He doesn't need to improve, he just needs to consume someone worse. As long as there's someone messier, louder, more broken, he feels clean by comparison. But this is false virtue, born not of effort but of judgment. He's not elevating himself, he's just keeping better company by scrolling worse. Degeneracy as moral entertainment. He binges others' dysfunction, trash TV, TikTok spirals, YouTube train wrecks. Not to learn or warn, but to feel superior. It's not horror, it's comfort. Their downfall becomes his baseline. Every relapse, breakdown, or public meltdown reassures him, I'm doing fine. He doesn't realize he's feeding on failure like fast food for the ego. Stagnation by design. Because he defines himself by not being the worst, he never aims for being better. Why strive when others are falling behind faster? His growth halts, his standards shrink. He's not climbing, he's clinging to the middle rung and laughing at the ones slipping below. This is not morality, this is self-soothing through comparison. Contempt as camouflage. He mocks openly, look at these losers. But the laughter is a mask. Deep down he recognizes fragments of himself in what he sees, the wasted time, the bad habits, the apathy. But pointing at others keeps him from confronting himself. It's easier to diagnose the disease in others than to treat it in yourself. The mirror will break. One day the content runs dry, or he wakes up and realizes he's now the punchline. The distance he counted on collapses. Because he never built anything solid in himself, he has no anchor. Just a trail of sneers and empty moral victories. The comparisons protected his ego, but not his soul. You're not rising if you're just falling slower. The comparative saint believes he's clean because others are dirtier, but filth by comparison is still filth. Without intention, discipline, and discomfort, he's just another drifting piece in the algorithm's sea of moral decay, clinging to fragments of not as bad. Ask yourself, who do I feel better than? And why do I need to? If all the degenerates disappeared, would I still feel okay about myself? What have I built in myself that stands independent of others' failures? The comparative saint doesn't need worse people to compare to. He needs standards that don't move with the crowd. The competitor, the one who measures his worth by the metrics of others. He wakes up already behind. Someone is richer, someone is leaner, someone's outfit, jawline, income, routine, better. He doesn't consume content for fun anymore. He consumes it to see where he ranks. Every scroll is a comparison. Every like is a quiet defeat. The world as a leaderboard. The algorithm doesn't show him people. It shows him standards, sculpted bodies, curated lives, effortless success. Every video whispers, you could be this, why aren't you? He starts to measure himself in reps, fits, followers, aesthetics, not for joy but for status. In his mind, the scoreboard is always on. The myth of motivation. He watches grind-set reels, cold plunge vlogs, financial flexes. It feels like fuel, but it's just pressure with background music. He says it's motivation, but deep down it's self-punishment. He's not inspired by these people. He's ashamed he's not one of them. He doesn't want to do more. He wants to be enough. The curse of visible progress. He can't just lift weights anymore. He has to document the physique. He can't just learn. He has to signal the knowledge. Growth isn't real unless someone sees it. And so he becomes a performer in his own life, chasing progress for the camera, not the soul. He's improving, but never arriving. Jealousy, disguised as discipline. He claps for others publicly, but deep down he resents them. Not because they succeeded, but because their success reminds him of his own insufficiency. His goals become shaped not by desire, but by envy. He doesn't want what he wants what wins. Even in victory, he feels like a fraud. The infinite game with no exit. There's no finish line, no final form. Even if he gets the money, the look, the followers, there will always be someone better. And eventually he realizes this race doesn't end when you win, it ends when you quit running. But he's afraid to stop, because if he's not competing, who is he? You were never meant to be a mirror of other men. The competitor thinks he's striving for excellence, but he's really running from shame. His value was never meant to be earned through aesthetics, wealth, or rank, but somewhere along the line he forgot. And the more he wins, the emptier he feels, because none of it was ever for him. Ask yourself, who am I trying to impress? What would I chase if no one was watching? Do I want to grow or just not lose? The competitor doesn't need another rival. He needs a reason that's his own.